Well, the only way we can read it is that it looks like we're heading into a housing recession. And if that is indeed the case, it doesn't bode well for the economy as a whole.
What up, folks? LifeofRudeDude back with another video today. I hope everybody's doing well. Remember, health is wealth. Please take care of yourself and your family. If you're new to my channel or if you have not done so yet, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button for this video. Also hit that notification and the bell. This way you're notified each and every time I drop a video. What we're talking about today, folks, is the housing recession. Is the housing market going into a recession? Well, according to some of the economic experts, we might be headed that way. Take a look.
No better conversation to have than with Jerry Howard. You know him as the CEO of the National Association of Home Builders. And sir, I'm wondering sort of your key takeaway from this report, how you're reading it.
Well, the only way we can read it is that it looks like we're heading into a housing recession. And if that is indeed the case, it doesn't bode well for the economy as a whole. There's still some hope that things can turn around, but we're getting more and more pessimistic.
Home builders getting more pessimistic, yet still the affordability question there, the need for more supply. When we look at the housing starts data that we're going to get a little bit later in the week, are people still going to want to be breaking ground, Jerry?
No, I think people are going to start to hold off. In fact, when I travel the country and talk to builders, a lot of them are starting to get very, very cautious about whether they're going to break down. That's particularly true in the spec market, but it's also true in the market where they are negotiating with customers for sales right now, because at the same time as we're seeing inflation on the mortgage rates and interest, we're also seeing increases in construction costs that are really throwing the market off. What I'm really worried about is, historically, housing has led us into every recession since World War II, but it's also led us out of every recession since World War II. Right now, with the supply shortage we have, with the fact that we're getting hit at both ends of the pipeline, cost of construction and then cost of loans, I don't know that we'd be able to lead us out of a recession. I think that this is a potentially dangerous situation.
I'm wondering if you can draw out a little bit more some of the supply side issues here, Jerry. If confidence is hitting a new multi-year low, then what does this mean in terms of the broader issues that you can see among builders and all the people who are in the supply side?
Well, you're going to see builders do what they do in terms of a recessionary climate. They'll retrench a little bit. Some of them will start taking on contracts for larger remodeling and renovation projects. You'll see them, as I mentioned, stop doing any spec housing. And on the supply side, hopefully, this situation will drive policymakers to the conclusion that we need to have a long-term lumber agreement with Canada, that we need to get the supply chain fixed, and that we need to get rid of some of the regulations, particularly at the state and local level, but also the federal level, that are increasing the cost of housing. And then lastly, we need to look at our labor supplies over the long term. There are still hundreds of thousands of jobs out there in the construction sector that haven't been filled.
So how do you square that? If you have a number of jobs that are open that haven't been filled, and yet you're starting to see a slowdown, is sort of this quote, if we get there, housing recession, due to a supply issue, or are there more concerns about a demand issue?
Well, the more interest rates go up, the more it becomes a demand issue. It's sort of a catch-22, if you will. The demand had been very, very strong. We never fully stopped seeing demand as we came out of the Great Recession. So demand was out there, household formation is strong, but if people can't afford to buy, particularly the first-time home buyer can't get into the market, that has an impact across the board.
Jerry, how much duress are home builders under to lower their prices? How much are they worrying about, well, the people who have signed contracts but haven't yet got their houses and what the knock-on effects are there?
Well, a lot of those contracts had escalator clauses in them, believe it or not, that the builder would expect if he had to pay more for some of the materials that the customer would pick up the price at the back end, or they would cancel the contract. I'm starting to hear more and more now about cancellation of contracts in the last month and a half than I have ever before.
To the extent that prices can start falling in the housing market, then how do they fall? How fast do they fall? And do they fall fast enough to avert any potential future issues?
Well, that's an interesting question because we haven't had this situation before where we're going into a recession, but we still have major supply shortages. And I guess it's going to depend upon how recessionary the rest of the economy gets as to how this will all balance out in the end. Right now, I think that if this recession is, as our economists are saying, relatively shallow, and we come out of it by the middle or the end of next year, I think we'll be okay. But if it gets any more dire, that's when I think we're going to have a longer term and a deeper problem.
What is the historical lead time? If housing is the leading indicator, what signals are you next looking for?
I think the next signal that we have to look for is the labor markets and unemployment. In fact, right now, in a conversation I had today with some economists, that is the only signal that's outstanding that would keep us from saying we're definitely heading into a recession.
Another big story that we're watching this morning is also housing data. We got a slew of new numbers this morning. Housing starts and building permits. Fewer houses started than expected on the starting side. Building permits, we got more than expected. So this really doesn't entirely point to a brake check on the housing market. But when you consider we got NAHB data yesterday, home builders saying they saw the second largest decline on record. That's not because of higher mortgage rates. A lot of that is also because of the cost inflation that led to a lot of pauses on construction. So you would think it's a complicated picture, right? More supply might mean that prices could come down because there's just more buyers able to, absorb, or rather supply able to absorb those price increases. But a very noisy market right now.
Well, also it's the outlook, right? I mean, the thinking here is that yes, I mean, if we have more inventory, prices come down, but the rates are higher, so the monthly mortgage rate that home buyers are looking at are going to cost more. And then there's the question of where's the economy headed, and is that demand going to continue? If that's not the case, we might see housing starts go down even more.
Well, and this is the kind of song and dance that, mortgage rates and the home builders and the home buyers are all playing right now. So let's get a little bit more of an expert analysis on what's going on in the housing market with Odetta Cushy, First American Deputy Chief Economist, joining us live this morning. Thanks so much for hopping on. I want to ask you about kind of what your read was on the data. Again, fewer houses started than expected, but also more building permits than expected. Does that tell you anything about what's happening here? Is the housing market still trying to readjust in this rising rate environment?
Housing starts are behaving just as we expected them to, particularly after seeing that builder sentiment data come in 7 months in a row of declining builder sentiment. Builders are responding to declining affordability predominantly. So those housing starts numbers coming in low was not unexpected. Permits coming in higher than consensus. That was primarily led by multifamily permits. So the rental market continues to show some strength. But by and large, the housing market is slowing. Home building is a leading indicator of housing activity, and the housing market is slowing. The Federal Reserve tightening is having its intended effect on this very interest rate sensitive sector.
Yeah, Odetta, when you talk about declining affordability, I mean, certainly a concern for builders, but also buyers as well. I'm curious how you're looking at the demand picture in light of rising rates, even if the inventory is starting to expand a little.
So affordability is actually down 50% year over year, and that's really being led by the rapid increase in mortgage rates. There remains a deep-seated desire for homeownership, and from a long-term perspective, the demographics support more home buying demand, but there's a portion of potential home buyers that simply cannot afford to buy in this market. And then there's another portion of home buyers that are hesitant to buy in this market simply because of the uncertain economic environment. Buying a home is the largest financial decision that someone will likely ever make, and you need consumer confidence for that. And certainly right now, there's a lot of uncertainty in the economy.
Odetta, when you look at the overall kind of just slew of home related data, right? I mean, it's very different, and it's not as binary as maybe the Fed would like to see in inflation reports, right? You want to see inflation go down, you don't want to see it go up. Whereas if you're looking at these starts and permits, it's not as clear if higher, lower means something from the Fed's perspective. So how do you think they're reading these reports? Are they saying, well, the housing market is too hot, we got to get more aggressive, or things are cooling, demand softening, maybe that's good for us to do a little bit of stepping off the pedal in terms of rate increases?
I think the Fed's looking at some of the higher frequency measures. So we look at mortgage applications data, and we're seeing that that is coming down. So certainly demand is softening in the housing market. Refinances are down, of course. And so, the Fed's is having its intended effect on the housing market, but for prices, house prices, those tend to be downside sticky. So it will be a while before we see the softening in demand reflected in house price moderation. We're seeing it a little bit, but again, house prices are downside sticky. Home sellers would rather withdraw from the market rather than lower prices. And so it will take some time before we really start to see some strong moderation in house price growth.
Odetta, in terms of buyers, we keep hearing that those buyers who are still in the market and looking are increasingly moving away from the 30-year fixed mortgage to an adjustable rate. And I wonder, when you look at that, the shift that's happening, what concerns does that raise for you?
I know that, ARMs were adjustable rate mortgages, otherwise known as ARMs, are really, they tend to trigger memories from the Great Recession. But today's ARMs are not the same as those, in the mid 2000s. And so, for some buyers, ARMs offer a lower interest rate and allow them to afford that home. And so it could be a viable option for some potential home buyers, particularly first-time home buyers.
And then I want to ask just about the rates themselves on 30-year fixed. We've noticed that there's been a reversal of that over the past few weeks, kind of ticked back up again, but kind of unclear where we go from here. The big argument is that we still don't know exactly where the Fed is going to be able to stop on its interest rate hikes. That perhaps is a reason behind some of that volatility there. Do you have a call on where you could see the 30-year going in terms of the rate and what impact that would have in terms of the overall trends we were discussing in the last few minutes?
Interest rates are notoriously difficult to forecast, particularly the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, because it's tied to the broader economy. And so, you have recession fears, and they might be playing against, inflation. And so I think that, we'll probably see rates go a little bit higher. A lot of those rate increases from the Fed have already been priced into that 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I don't think we'll see them, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, go much lower. So it'll bounce around a little bit.
All right, folks, comment below and let me know what you guys thought of the video. Based on the experts and what they're saying regarding the charts and the reports that they're looking at, we might be heading toward a housing recession. What's playing a major role in that right now is the Feds and the interest rates, the supply chain issues, and then also the construction industry. Now, if we are heading into a housing recession, that could confirm that right now, economically, we are in a recession. A lot of people are saying, hey, we're heading to a recession. We might be having a recession. In my honest opinion, I think we are in the recession. Appreciate you guys watching the videos and supporting the channel. If you have not done so, please make sure you subscribe. Make sure you guys also visit the merch store. Grab yourself a t-shirt, a sweater, a coffee mug, phone case, whatever. Greatly appreciate you guys supporting Black business. Also, if you're in the Houston, Texas area and you're in need of a house cleaning, check us out at DirtBustersandMore.com. Go to the website for a free quote. We can take care of all your residential and commercial property cleaning needs at a great low price. DirtBustersandMore.com. Follow me on Instagram, LifeofRudeDude, and motivated.millionaire_LLC. Remember, health is wealth. Please take care of yourself and your family. We're going to $1 million with everything.